Hi, Ted.
Hey.
Where's the baby?
He's visiting Grandma.
George, we missed this.
We might as well leave.
Yeah, he's not here.
Get these groceries.
It wasn't unnice, Ted. You're right, it probably wasn't funny. I'm sure it wasn't funny if I said it. All right, Frank. Lead us whenever you're ready.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today. Thank you for the many blessings that you give each and every one of us. Thank you for all of us that come out and hear your word. Let us all take something home with us, Heavenly Father. Be with us now as Jeff give us the word. And we thank you for so much for everything that you have done. In Jesus' holy name, amen.
Thank you, Frank. It's good to see everybody here and everybody's not out chasing Pokemon or... It is insane the way these people are going after these things. It's nuts. It is completely insane how people...
I'll tell you, when the truth comes out, they're going to find out.
The Emel's a Pokemon? Yeah.
Pokemon.
I think he's Pikachu. I really do. He's got the yellow shirt.
I heard somebody say they wish they would work that hard to try to find a job.
Oh, now that would be interesting, wouldn't it? They probably wouldn't catch them all then. There's the fun in that. I have been very stressed about this all day. I'm worried.
Really?
Or we're going to study worried. I thought that'd be a really strange way of starting the whole thing. I guess we could probably all assume that we've all worried about something at some point. Had anxiety over something.
Is this something to do with the presidential election coming up or anything?
Well, it has to do with you keep talking about the presidential election. I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, you know, there is a lot of tension and anxiety in this country right now with all the riots and stuff and all the protesting and the presidential stuff. I mean, yeah, there is a lot of it. But there's a lot in all of us' lives all the time, a lot of times. Worry, the definition of worry according to Mr. Webster, is to give way to anxiety and unease, to allow one's mind to dwell on difficulties or trouble. So worrying is dwelling on problems or potential problems. And for a lot of us, at least I know for me a lot of times, that's where the problem comes in, dwelling on the potential problems. Not so much the ones that have actually happened that I can deal with and that I can make a decision about and move on, but the ones I'm worried about are going to happen. And we're going to look a little bit about that tonight. Now, question number one, is worry healthy? Is there anything healthy about worry? Physically, spiritually, emotionally? What does worry do to us physically? Especially when it gets extreme. It can really destroy your health, can't it? It can give you ulcers, heart attacks, high blood pressure, strokes, headaches, migraines. It can really mess you up. Tom? It sure does, doesn't it? And if, it lowers your immune system, makes you much more susceptible to getting normal everyday sicknesses. What about emotionally? What can stress and anxiety and fear on a regular basis do to you emotionally?
Brings on depression.
Depression can bring anxiety, just constant high anxiety. You can have panic attacks. People become unable to function. They can't go into stores. They can't do things. Don't want to go out in public. Become paranoid and withdraw from people.
Probably have panic attacks.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what does worrying all the time do for you? It gives you a very negative outlook, doesn't it? It just makes you kind of negative all the time. Makes everything seem kind of negative. I'm not going to say ding this week. But what does it do to us spiritually when we worry a lot? Well, everybody was nailing the physical and the emotional. What about spiritually? What's it do?
No, we know that worry, we know that we have a way out through Christ.
Absolutely.
And through our prayer,
Yes.
You know that we can pray and be relieved of a lot of things. If we're not an Indian giver, in other words, when we
And
pray.
that's
we
part of
gotta
what
be
we're going to look at
specific.
too. That is true. The Indian giving thing doesn't work real well. Our faith suffers, doesn't it? For worrying, isn't worry really a lack of faith in a lot of ways? Buddy?
I heard one time, worry is praying to the wrong God.
I've heard that too. And you know what? I think that's very accurate. It's very accurate. Because when we worry, what are we trying to do?
But on our schedule.
We're trying to fix whatever it is.
Well, on
On our schedule, in our time, what we want, the way we want it. A lot of times, it steals our peace, it steals our joy from us. It stunts our growth as Christians and as people. And what about the purpose that God has for us? God has a purpose for all of us, doesn't He? We're all here to do something, somewhere on the line. And if we're busy worrying and being depressed and it brings us down, then we don't do that, do we? Second question, is worrying a choice? Do we get to choose whether we worry or not? Yes. We get to choose whether we worry or not. Worry, in a lot of ways, is the action of fear. When you fear something, that's what you worry about. You worry about things that you fear. I mean, that's what starts, at least for me, that's what starts it. I'm afraid of something, something I have to do, something I don't want to do. Then I start dwelling on it and contemplating the whole thing and beating it to death, usually.
Jeff, I do feel that there's times like parents that have children, men and women in the armed services, maybe over like in Afghanistan or Iraq or some of those places. I think it'd be very hard for them not, I don't know if you'd call it worry, but a real concern about.
And that's what, Gene, can you see this from up there?
You know,
And that's what we're going to talk about, the difference. There's a difference in being concerned and being worried.
right.
Concern is when you see a situation, something's going on, you have to make a decision, and you deal with it, you give the rest to God, and that's it. Figure out what you can do, pray about what you need to do it, and move on. Don't leave it right here in front of your face where you're looking through it constantly. That's not healthy, that's not going to work. Worrying is much more obsessive, it's much more dwelling on the thing until it becomes negative and it becomes something that controls you and holds you down. It's not healthy anymore. It becomes self-destructive. The only thing you focus on is right in front of your face all the time. And everything else you do goes through that particular worry. And some people, we call them worrywarts, worry about absolutely everything all the time. There's always something. It's just not, it's not a healthy thing. It's not healthy at all. So personally, I prefer, like you said, Gene, and that's absolutely right. It's fine to be concerned about things. Because you have to be concerned. You can't just not look at anything and ignore everything. But getting obsessive with it and making it something, buddy.
Sharing an obsessive story. I worked with a fellow many years ago that worried like you're talking about all day long. The guy he had a good job, good family, good income, everything, you know, he should have had it nice. He worried every day. He'd come to work and he'd worry, old Joe would worry. He just, one day he came in and he said, buddy, I'm really worried today. And that caught my attention. I said, why, Joe? And he said, I can't think of anything to be worried about.
And that's the way some people are. They're more lost when they can't figure out what to worry about than they are when they're worried. Another part of worrying is projecting things. Does anybody know what projecting is?
Trying to tell the future.
That's fortune telling, Jake. That's not quite the same thing.
Project.
Projecting is similar to that in some sense. Projecting is fear of what could happen, and it's also fear of what has happened to you. Lots of people who've been through very, very stressful situations over and over and over again, when something similar starts to happen, they start reacting like it's going to, okay, I've been here before, I know how this is going to end, and they go into autopilot and just do whatever it is they're going to do. And that takes away their opportunity to change the situation because their actions, in a lot of ways, cause the situation to happen again and again and again. Even historians say that history will repeat itself if you don't learn from it. Projecting is also worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet. Oh, I have a doctor's appointment next week, and somebody I know had the same symptoms And the internet says, if I feel this way and I have all this, then, oh man, I must have this disease or something. Well, then I'm going to go to a doctor. He's going to say this is going to happen, which means I'm going to have to do this, and this is going to happen. And 6 months down the road, I'm dead and buried. And nothing's even happened yet. But I had been stressed out for weeks. And people do that. They're projecting what's going to happen on the things. And it's not even happened yet. And the thing is, we find out if you pay attention, a lot of times, a lot of the stuff we fret and worry about is stuff that doesn't ever happen. Or at least, even if it does, not necessarily to the extent that we thought it was going to. So we just waste a whole bunch of time. Now, here's question number 3, for those of you who are counting, which I got it written down. That's how I know it's 3, Gene, because I probably forgot. Is worry a lack of faith and or a sin? Now, I think most of us would agree fairly easily that being a lack of faith, a lot of times worry is a lack of faith. Because if we give it to God, God says He'll take care of us. But what about the sin part? Robert?
I think when it becomes sin is when it becomes extinguished. The time involved that we spend burden. At first it starts out as concern. And then it keeps growing, growing, and growing, where it becomes actual worry, where we stop trusting in God, and it's just like a snowball. We're rolling downhill. And at that point,
And I think you're probably onto something there, Robert. The truth is, worrying, like you said, being concerned isn't necessarily a sin, but if it gets to the point where it starts interfering with your faith and you're serving God and doing the things you're supposed to do, if not being a sin, it definitely, to me, leads to sin if it goes on long enough and gets extreme enough. If it stops you from coming to church on Sunday mornings, and then you stop serving, and you quit doing all, you quit reading your Bible, and people do these things. It's not abnormal to be under stress and not go, I really can't handle going to church Sunday morning. It's just too much. Or I can't do what I was going to do. It's just too much for me. And sometimes we bring that on ourselves. And that's not talking about normal anxiety, normal things that happen, because sometimes we do have things that happen. People pass away, extreme things happen in our lives. That's grief. That's a whole different ballgame. And there's a lot of different ways to handle a lot of this stuff. But just to worry and worry and worry and fret about everything to the point where it makes you unfunctionable is unhealthy. James 4:17 says, anyone who knows the good they should do and doesn't do it, sins. So if you know, to me, if I know I'm supposed to be serving God and I know I'm supposed to be going to church on Sunday mornings and be with my church family, I've made a commitment to do something with the church or with people, and then I don't do it, to me, that's what I know I should do and I don't do it. So to me, that's a sin. That's my perspective, and you have every right to disagree with me if you'd like, but that's the way I see it. Well, let's see what the Bible has to say about it. Let's look at Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 27. And no, man, these are not really big readings, and there's no huge words.
Matthew what?
Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 27.
Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?
So Jesus says this. He says, don't worry about your clothes. Don't worry about your life and what you eat or drink. The birds don't reap. They don't sow. They don't store up food. But your Heavenly Father takes care of them. He provides for them. And aren't you more important than they are? Aren't you more valuable than they are?
Can I take that into Dr. Ray and show him that scripture when he starts lecturing on my weight, cholesterol, and everything else? It's this right here.
Don't worry about what you're going to eat. Gene, I think that's called taking it out of context.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. But if you want to try that, go right ahead. I'm going to remember that. That might work. You never do know. That's a pretty good way of looking at it, Gene. So, in verse 27, what's it say in verse 27?
can add a single hour to your life by worrying.
Now, didn't we just talk about the fact that worrying would actually take time from your life? So not only if you're worrying, you can't add any time, you're taking away time that you can't get back. Let's stay in Matthew 6 and go to verses 32 to 34.
Pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own.
So he says the pagans run after these things. Now, don't you see in the world every day around us people worrying about their cars and about their houses and about their stuff? And do I have enough money to retire in 30 years? And all these worries about all this stuff. Stuff. I got to have better stuff, and I got to have plenty of stuff because I don't know when I'm going to need more stuff. And what is the point of it all in reality? Because the truth is, how many, do you think everybody who plans to retire in 30 years actually gets to retire in 30 years? Some of them don't make it to retirement, do they? So they spend all this time and all this worry and all this everything worrying about something that never happened.
But you know, just like out in California now, they got all these fires
Yes,
going on.
they do.
These people are losing their homes.
They're losing everything, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just getting wiped out. But every now and then you'll see somebody say, well, I've lost everything, but I still have my life. I'm still here. And, you know, that really straightens your priorities up pretty quick when you've been hit that hard, you know.
Isn't it funny how sometimes God humbles us and puts us in a situation to realize what's important to us?
Yeah.
And lots of things in our lives. Because I'm sure some of those people may have been very caught up in everything they had and thought that they needed more and more and had all this stuff. And then when it gets taken from you, sometimes you realize the people in West Virginia that had all that flooding, I'm sure a lot of them realized what was important. They lost an awful lot. When you lose a lot like that, you realize you're worried about a lot of stuff that's just wasting time. It's just pointless. And Jesus is saying the pagans run after that. Your Father knows what you need, that you need to eat, you need taken care of, and He'll give it to you. But what's He saying? Now, when God does stuff, most of the time there's an act of obedience involved on our part. God says, you can live forever, I'll forget about your sins, but you have to follow me, repent, and be baptized. Well, here He's saying, I'll take care of you, but there's something He asks us to do. What's He ask us to do in verse 33?
Seek His kingdom.
Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness. And then these things will be done for you as well. So God's saying you put me first and do what I need you to do, and what I've called you to do, and don't worry so much about everyday stuff. I'll take care of you if you do what I ask you to do. Give it to me and go, and I'll take care of it. In verse 34, no truer statement ever been made.
You got a hand up, Gary.
Gary.
Well, I think that whole verse may have a different meaning for us than what's here.
Okay.
When God says He'll take care of you, it could be that you die.
Yeah, absolutely.
You go home.
Absolutely.
And that's not what you had in mind.
That's not what we have in mind, no. No, a lot of times I would agree that God taking care of us isn't necessarily according to what we think being taken care of is. When we pray to God for what we need and God says, I'm going to give you what you need, there's a big difference a lot of times in my life between what I think I need and what I want and what God says, you don't need that, you need this. I get put in situations and get to do stuff that I look at in my life and go, you know, God, this isn't really how I had this planned. And He goes, you had it planned? Really? God's not really worried about my plan or anybody else's but His. And a lot of times that happens. A lot of times that happens. In verse 34, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And I think there should be a giant amen at the end of that. Because I don't go through too many days myself personally, that there's not enough going on in it that I need to be worried. Does that mean you're supposed to be irresponsible and not think about your doctor's appointments and your bills and all that stuff? It doesn't mean forget about that. He's talking about don't be worried. Don't get too caught up in tomorrow or next week. Worry about right now. Let's look at Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 8. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. Philippians chapter 4.
Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Do not, that's it, you nailed it. 6 through 8. Did you get
Okay,
that?
no.
Okay.
Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
In verse 6, he says, do not be anxious, don't worry, don't fear about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. So what does that mean we're supposed to do?
Really be in constant prayer.
That's a part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, have a relationship with God that you're talking to Him daily.
Don't worry, give it to God. First thing you should do is pray. With prayer and petition. Praying is just talking to God. A petition is making a request. God, what should I do here? God, what do you need me to do here? And with thanksgiving. And that doesn't mean you have to wait till November to pray. Chris? To me, that means you pray to God, you ask Him for the guidance, you put the petition, and then you thank Him. Because you know He's going to take care of you. It's a thank you ahead of time.
But we also thank you for our blessings we have every day in a lot of ways so that He knows that we're not taking them for granted.
Absolutely.
I think all of us are very thankful for air conditioning right now.
I'll tell you what, I think Gary just caught a Pokemon. Is that a Pokemon? Are you catching a Pokemon?
No.
No? Oh. Thought maybe it was one that was really hard to get when it's roaming around in here.
Yes, but what did people do before they had air conditioning?
They complained because it was too hot, Jake. No? They used fans. They went outside and went swimming. Yes, person that I mind, its name slips my mind.
I remember a couple different times whenever we'd be in a situation that was not comfortable for us. And I would pray and thank God for some of the arguments even, because there's things I've learned out of arguing with you. It sounds crazy, but
I don't know what you're talking about. Never had an argument in my entire life with anyone. Never. Never. No, I'm just kidding. And you do. You learn, and it's the thing. You thank God for everything He's done. Even for the bad situations that you learn things from. Because sometimes what we need is to be put in that situation we don't necessarily want to be in. And we definitely wouldn't walk into it on our own.
another thing I can think of thanking God for is my past, because without my past, we're not able to help these people that we do on Sunday.
Well, we can all use our past to serve. And you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. God trains us and prepares us to do what He needs us to do. Just like He did, well, we just studied the Exodus. Just like He did with the Israelites and Moses. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, getting ready to go into the wilderness. You know, He prepared the Israelites physically, grew their faith, so that when the time came to do what He needed them to do, they'd do it. So God puts us in a lot of situations to train us and prepare us and to teach us. Gary's catching Pokemon left and right. He must have a Pokemon run. Yes, Robert?
Yeah, I think that God really wants us to bring our problems to Him. And I think that when we fail to, I think that He's actually disappointed, and I think He's actually upset with us when we don't bring our problems to Him.
And isn't it upsetting to us when we have our kids and we know what they're doing? We can see it. And they think we're old and nuts. At least my kids think I'm old and nuts. But you can see what your, Gary, not supposed to shake your head to that one. But you can see your children about to do something, and you got a pretty good idea what's coming, and they don't come to you. And if they do come to you, they don't listen. They don't do it. Can you imagine how God must feel?
Don't forget, that's two different things.
What?
Don't listen and don't do it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, most of the time they listen to you.
I think my kids hear. I don't know if they listen.
They don't do it.
They don't do it, so they must not be hearing. Are you going to catch any more Pokemon here? I mean, you said you got Pikachu alert.
She's trying to turn it off.
Oh, okay. Well, you know you got to catch them all, Gary. That's the song anyway. And then in verse 8, he says, finally, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Positive thinking. Think about the positive. He's telling them to think about the good things. You find what you're looking for, unless you're U2. And I don't know if anybody knows that song in here, but did you hear that song? Did you know who U2 is? You know, I still haven't found one. Never mind.
That was an aircraft.
It was an aircraft, Gene, or Jake. Sorry, Gene. It was also an airplane. It was also a really weird band in the 80s. But you find what you're looking for. If you're looking for the negative, you're going to find negative. There's always negative. But if you're looking for positive, you're always going to find that too. Because it's there too. So you're going to find what you're looking for. So what you focus on is going to dictate how you feel. If you focus on negative things all the time, how are you going to feel? You're going to be really down and depressed and probably grouchy and just not really worth much of anything to anybody. Now, how many of you know what self-talk is?
Self-talk?
Self-talk, and I'm not talking about the people that walk around going, I told you to be quiet. That's that kind of self-talk.
But you mean that people are out in the garage working and they mumble stuff and that?
No, it's not. Kind of.
Ooh.
Self-talk is how you talk to yourself, either out loud or the way you're thinking.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were talking about you had like partners in the garage with you. Going, hey,
you're there by yourself, but
yeah.
I'm the point I start answering.
Well, as long as you don't start arguing with yourself, Gene, you'll probably be all right. I hope you didn't lose. If you lost an argument to yourself, Gene. Self-talk is how we talk to ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves when we're alone. It has a lot to do with what we think about ourselves. Now, a person, a public speaker, a person talking to you, can talk to you at about 300 to 400 words in a minute. How fast do you think you can talk to yourself? 10 times that. You can talk to yourself 3,000 to 4,000 words in a minute. Now, how much of an impact do you think that would have? Because if somebody around you, we all have people in our lives that we look up to, that we respect, that we love, that their opinion matters to us. Now, if one person can impact you that much, who are you around all the time? You're around everybody else all the time? No. But you're always thinking, aren't you? Unless you're asleep. Then you're dreaming. So maybe you're talking to yourself in your dreams. I don't know. But the impact you have on yourself and what you're thinking is 10 times that of anybody else has the chance to do. So what you're saying to yourself about yourself has a lot to do with how you feel. If you're walking around saying, you know, they said I was a failure, yeah, I probably am. I never do anything right. I don't get anything done right. Every time I do something, I fail. Well, that's one way of looking at it. But don't we all fall down? Shouldn't you be looking at, you know, I fell down, but I got back up. And I kept going. So there's a positive or negative to the same situation. It just depends on which one you want to focus on. Makes a big difference in whether you're worrying about everything and how you feel about yourself, what kind of an attitude you have. And our attitude has a lot to do with how well we can serve God. Ding. Sorry, couldn't help myself. 2 Timothy 1:7. Let's look at that real quick. 2 Timothy 1:7.
For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline.
For God did not give us a spirit of being timid, or fear, or worrying, but a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. Now, why would it be important for us to have a spirit of power and self-discipline when it comes to worrying, being afraid, anxiety.
Because if you should do that, a lot of times I do, and God's gonna take care of it, what am I talking about?
And that's self-discipline, isn't it? It's realizing what you've done and getting yourself there. And that's what I think it is. It's about being able to understand. When you have a problem or a situation, you have to process the situation. Figure out if what you're dealing with should be worried. Is this really real? Is this something I should be worried about? And self-discipline has a lot to do with being able to control your emotions and being able to control worry. Worry and anxiety going far enough turns into so many other things. Turns into frustration, can turn into anger. Can do a lot of things to you. Worry is a very powerful thing. Fear is a very, very powerful thing. Fear may be one of the most powerful things that we deal with emotionally. I mean, if you think of the thing in life that bothers you the most, it's probably something you're afraid of. And fear comes all the way from our childhood. Things that happened to us when we were young. People are scared of spiders and snakes and all kinds of stuff because of things that they learned. It's a learned thing. They learned it because they were little. They were scared of a spider. Now they're an adult. They're still scared of a spider.
Gene don't get grizzly bears.
Well, Gene wrestles grizzly bears.
Oh,
He takes them out. We spent 10 minutes trying to leave because Melanie saw a spider in the car door.
Really?
I had to get out of the car and chase the spider around. Fear can control you. And if you're with the right person, then they control you, then it controls everything.
you know, Jeffrey, I'll tell you, something that makes me very angry, though, is drug dealers and drug traffickers. I think if they're convicted, they should be hung. And you see all the people that have been ripped, families being ripped apart, and all the heartbreak and everything because of them, and they don't have nothing to be afraid of. Well, until God appears, they won't be. But
It's true.
But there has to be a way to end that stuff.
Well, Jake, it's a sad statement, but as long as people are willing to buy those drugs and use those drugs, they're going to find ways to get them here. And you know what? That leads back to the whole fear thing. Because a lot of addiction comes from fear and becomes from not having correct coping skills and not knowing how to handle things. And a lot of people use it to escape. Tom?
I find it interesting when he says that God does not give us the spirit of fear. If God doesn't give us the spirit of fear,
Well, who's the only other guy you can play for? Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a good point, Tom. And it's true, because what does he use to make us fear, to make us worry? That's Satan trying to make us insecure and make us do what he wants us to do.
And you know, when we talk about all these good things, dwell on these good things, the way the world is today, like, I don't think anybody in this room can answer why ISIS wants to kill people. That seems to be their only goal. They don't even have a community to live in. But I'm just saying, that song we sing, "This world is not my world."
Not our home.
Not
Yes.
home.
Yes.
That's what dwells in my mind.
Yeah.
As bad as all it is, I'm not staying here. You aren't staying.
That's right.
We're going on. So, you stay positive. This is not our home.
It's not. It's not our home. But we have the opposite job of Satan. Satan's job is to take as many people down with him as he can take, because that's what he's doing. He knows he's lost, and he wants to take as many with him, and he doesn't really care how. Our job is to try to take as many up with us as we can. It's a constant war. And Satan is crafty. Let's look at 1 Peter 5, verses 7 through 9. 1 Peter 5, verses 7 through 9.
Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Be alert and sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering.
I got to it and caught up.
Okay, he says, cast your anxiety, cast your worries, your fears on him, on God. Well, why does he say to cast them on God? Because he cares for us. He loves us. He wants the best for us. Doesn't mean getting to the best is always the easiest, but he wants the best for us. And he says, be self-controlled and alert. Why do we need to be self-controlled and alert?
Well, when we let our guard down, Satan can overcome us.
That's what it says, doesn't it? Because your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. We have to be alert and disciplined because Satan is constantly trying to get us, trying to trip us up. He's constantly and a lion is what? It's a predator. Satan is actively searching for us to destroy us. Now let's look at Proverbs chapter 12. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25.
Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up.
An anxious heart weighs a man down, but a kind word cheers him up. The New Living Translation says, worry weighs a person down, an encouraging word cheers him up. So we see that worry brings us down. Now we talked a little bit about self-talk earlier. An encouraging word cheers him up. Now do you think there's any chance that we can encourage ourselves a little bit with all this self-talk that we do? We can be our own best friend in some ways, can't we? Now, if somebody tells you half your life that you're stupid, you can't do anything right, you start believing it eventually, don't you? Those of us who have been there, you do. You start believing it. You start thinking, all right, you're right, I can't do anything right. Now, if people can tell you that, what if you start telling yourself that God says I'm worth something, I am worth something, I can do stuff right, I'm not that bad. You start telling yourself the opposite. If people can convince you the negative, then you ought to be able to convince yourself of the positive. It shouldn't be an impossible task, unless you're a Pirates fan.
Something to worry about.
Are you stressed and worried about that, Ted? Your anxiety get a little high?
Yeah, it's still.
Well, don't worry, the Steelers are coming up pretty soon. Then the stress really begins.
I'm sure we all feel the same way.
Yes, we do. We do, Ted. So worry will weigh you down. But we can encourage other people that we see that are down, but we can encourage ourselves too. So what do we do? We're supposed to pray about it, give it to God. But let's see exactly what we're supposed to do here. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight.
So what are we supposed to do? It's pretty simple, isn't it? It's a simple concept, but is it easy to do? It's for me, it can be really, really hard. To trust in the Lord with all my heart. I can say it, and in my heart it's there, but when a situation happens, sometimes I tend to try to fix it myself. What can I do to fix this? And then I go, wait a minute, I can't do this. Then I give it to the Lord. Now you would think if we were intelligent human beings, eventually we'd figure out that it works much better if we just give it to God first. But it's that ending giver thing you were talking about, Gene. How many of us give something to God and then go, let me take that back. It's not working the way I want it to, God. Can I have that back?
Yeah.
And then you give it back to him and go, God, you're not fixing this though. Well, if you leave it here long enough, we play that whole fishing reel thing. You got here, want it back, here, take it back. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Now, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times situations happen, and I worry, and I fret, and I fear, and I realize down the road that it all made perfect sense. It didn't make any sense to me, but God knew what he was doing. Lots of times you have to get down the road a little further, look back and see God working in your life and what God did. God understands the whole thing a whole lot bigger and better than we do. Now what's verse 6 say? In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. The New Living Translation says, seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. So if we trust God and we give it to God, He will show us which way to go. He will tell us what to do. In His time. Not in our time necessarily. Unless our time happens to be His time. Which in my world, I'm too impatient. It's His time, and I want patience, and I want them right now. And it doesn't tend to work that way for most of us. It doesn't tend to work that way for most of us. I have a little chart that I found. And it's a God-Satan little chart. And it tells you, supposedly, some things, how you can tell whether God's doing it in your life or Satan's doing it in your life. Let's see if any of these ring true for you. God stills you. Satan rushes you. Satan wants you to hurry up and do it before you think about what you're doing. Don't give God the chance to help you. Keep going. God reassures you. Satan frightens you. God enlightens you, and Satan confuses you. God forgives you. Satan condemns you. God calms you. Satan stresses you. God encourages you. Satan discourages you. God comforts you. Satan worries you. And God leads you, and Satan pushes you. So if you feel like you're being pushed instead of being led, it just might be Satan rather than God. If you're feeling rushed rather than calm about the situation, maybe it's Satan. Maybe you're going the wrong way. If you're feeling confused, Satan wants you to be confused. He wants you to be very confused. And if you're condemned, if you feel like people are condemning you, you're condemning yourself, that might be Satan talking, not God. Not much of a chance God is going to get in your head and tell you how horrible you are and what you're doing wrong. And He may point out what you're doing wrong just so you learn what you're doing wrong. And that's what the law was about for the Israelites. It wasn't about how they saved themselves or a way to save themselves. It was a way for them to know when they were doing something wrong. So, that is all I have for tonight. That is all I have for the last 2 months. I'm not sure who will be teaching. You know who's going to be teaching?
No, I don't. We'll know before next week.
Okay. Whoever shows up next week to teach will be the teacher. If nobody shows up next week, Gene, it's you.
No.
You can just get up here and tell jokes. I thank you all for the last 2 months. I have enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Connie, thank you for reading every week. And Gene, let's give Jeff a hand.
Yeah. Did a good job, Phil. Okay. Who do we have on our prayer list tonight?
Remember,